What's up, everybody? This is Mike Manzer with another Manzer Faust Productions video. And this is a follow-up to yesterday's video that I did counting down my top 23 Vinegar Syndrome releases of 2023. So if you haven't watched that yet, go back and watch that. But in that video, I was stating that my number one release from this year, and probably the most important release that Vinegar Syndrome has done so far on many different levels, is of course the Vinegar Syndrome Lost Picture Show. And just from the start, this packaging is gorgeous. It pretty much takes care of everything you need it to. You got the nice kind of marquee design. What I really like about this set is you can fold it out. You pretty much got like a display piece of its own. Very cool. It's like sort of replicates like a downtown, like 42nd Street kind of vibe. With all the different marquees and the films they're showing. You also got the innards, which have these amazing newspaper articles and ads and everything for the films in this set. And it is broken up into two different sets. You get a booklet with each talking about the different films and restoration, what goes into discovering a lost film, and the information, making features, everything like that. So, very informative with the books. So that's the first one. This is the second. And this is very cool. You know, you always get the books with a lot of these releases, but this is the first time you get like kind of specially made for this release of like chronicling the different types of films in here, but also what goes into a lot of these films and why I feel like this is one of the most important releases that Vinegar Syndrome's ever been responsible for. Is it's really a celebration of restoration work and what really goes into saving a lot of lost and forgotten films from pretty much obscurity, destruction, everything like that. And this, going through this over the past weekend, so Saturday and Sunday, the 30th and 31st, was such a blast. And pretty much all of the movies in here are pretty solid. I had a good time watching all of them. There's one or two that I was a little, lukewarm on. But all in all, amazing jobs with what they had available for the restorations, the film elements, the OCNs, everything like that. Very cool seeing what went into them. Every movie has a great introduction from one of the crew members of Vinegar Syndrome talking about the film. It's really interesting to see the kind of passion that they go into with these films. So I'm going to talk about each film in the set, and this is going to be the pilot episode for a series I want to continue with called Boxed In. And this is a series where I talk about box sets. And I have a lot of box sets on the back burner I want to talk about that have come out throughout the years, from Severin, from Arrow, from all the different companies. And eventually, if I can get some of those old Indicator sets, I'd love to talk about those. But I like to start off with this because this is such a huge release, and it is probably, like I said earlier, one of the most important physical media releases. Just a celebration of what's great about physical media, but also what's great about restoration and saving these forgotten kind of cast aside films, because without it, you have a lot of art, a lot of history, a lot of like context into these into cinema in general, but a lot of these regional cultures of cinema and everything like that, it's all lost without the work of these people. And it's just another, you know, kind of initiative to really support Vinegar Syndrome and other labels, Severin, Kino Lorber, uh, you know, Arrow Video, 88 Films. The list goes on and on. Blue Underground, even. The list goes on and on because they're all just doing fantastic work and getting these films looking as great as they should be. Uh, and really shining a light on films that were really just like ignored or, you know, looked down upon in their times or even in, you know, modern society. Genre film is really just like a cast aside kind of art form, and it's a shame, but it's really important that these companies get the support from their fans so that they can continue to release amazing work on these films. So yeah, let's get into the films. I basically have these in the order that I had watched them. Uh, yeah, so let's get into it. The first film in the set is Barbara. And Barbara is a film from 1970. And it's an interesting film because what you got in this film is kind of an early kind of venture into what you would see in a lot of 70s film, the hardcore pornography, uh, early erotica, classic erotica kind of stuff. You see a lot in this film that is very, like, even by today's standards, very taboo, even during the heights of the very risky stuff they were doing in 70s and even in the 80s. There's a lot of taboos being broken in here. You got a lot of drug use. You got a lot of, you know, hardcore penetration. You got gay, homosexual sex. You got like bestiality at some points. It's just insane the kind of subject matter that they're doing in this film from 1970, and just like the kind of groundbreaking aspects of it. It's very much feels like an art film. Uh, it almost feels kind of like an erotic kind of take on the Holy Mountain kind of story, what led to Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain. I might be reading into that, but it's interesting to see it because all these different you know, fetishes and like kinks that these people are into are, you know, are explored, and people are opened up to new things that they had never imagined them being into and experiencing. Basically, the story revolves around this guy who pretty much runs like sort of like a cult, sex cult kind of thing. Um, it introduces him in the beginning of the film. There's a kind of narration going on off camera of interviews outside of what I believe is like a probably an erotic film or some kind of like town hall meeting on like censorship or anything like that. And they're getting different people from different backgrounds, different age groups, their opinion on censorship and these pornographic films that were starting to emerge at the time. So you get that as an intro, but you also have this scene of a couple having sex on a beach, and this one man kind of watching. I believe he's photographing as well, and then when they finish, he approaches and has sex with the couple, and it kind of the whole film has this very sketchy kind of consent. Obviously, a lot of the films in this set were made in the 60s and 70s. Was one film that was finished in the 80s, but the bulk of them are usually like 60s and 70s films. And obviously, the politics of the time, the kind of taboos of the time are completely different than how we look at them today. And I consent just is kind of a little bit irrelevant with this film. There is a lot of like explorations of abuse and violence and these kind of, you know, very uncomfortable subjects. Um, the way that it, uh, goes about it though is very interesting. The titular Barbara character is someone who comes into this cult um, as kind of like an unexperienced kind of person, and it's just a lot of these people from this surrounding kind of beach community coming together and sort of exploring these taboos and like society, and actually kind of leads to a bit of like a terrorist kind of organization and like an underground kind of thing. It's a very fascinating film. There's a lot of it that's almost shot like an art film. There's elements of like education and documentary films in this, scare films, all that kind of stuff. Very fascinating film to really kick off this set. Um, Vinegar Syndrome has always been very integral in doing extremely important releases of classic erotica. Right from their inception, a lot of the stuff that they've been putting out is very much in that world. And without their kind of input, a lot of this would just be lost, because even to this day, pornography is seen as sort of like a expendable kind of art, and not a lot of people are doing what should be done. That, you get people like Martin Scorsese and big names like that really championing the restorations and like a lot of these like highly regarded films, but a lot of these kind of erotic films and even exploitation and genre films just go unnoticed by a lot of mainstream. And again, this is why companies like Vinegar Syndrome are important in shining a light on these and getting them out to the public, to the consumer, and getting attention to these films and getting money to restore more films. And so more and more, as we discover these films, as we like restore these films, and as we as the consumer put money towards these companies, the more that is no longer lost, and the more context and kind of history behind a lot of these stories of cinema we have access to. And yeah, it's just really important. So I was really happy to see it start off with that film. And I did enjoy it. It's a little wonky in its story. A lot of the characters kind of seem a little unbelievable, but that's what you get with this kind of genre film. You get a lot of, the writing quirks of the filmmakers definitely come through in these films, and that's kind of the magic of them. So yeah, Barbara, solid opener to this set. Up next, we got the Las Vegas Strangler, also known as No Tears for the Damned. And this one was a little bit kind of my least favorite. It was an interesting film, but just the way it was kind of made, it kind of seemed a little bit generic towards like a late 60s kind of, psycho stalker kind of film. It focuses around a man who recently got married, kind of, on a whim in Las Vegas, and he brings his wife back to live with him, his mother, and kind of an adopted kind of serving character named Harmony. And this woman is like infatuated with the husband. He is like right from the get-go. She talks about the first time she saw him, how much love she had for him, and the first night they get together and go and get married and all this kind of stuff. It's just such a, there's like a magic to it. And, you really feel for these characters. You feel so happy for them. Then when they get to the mother's house, and it's hinted before that the wife is not a fan of his mother. The first time she had seen him, uh, he was with his mother, and she was not a fan of her, and she speaks about this. And he more tries to calm her down and make her feel more welcome. But as she gets in the door, the mother wants nothing to do with her. She is actively trying to get this marriage broken up, and she's trying to pay off the wife to just leave. Um, and she's very protective. There's almost like a childlike kind of mentality to her son, the husband, and it's almost kind of like a lower budget kind of Norman Bates kind of situation. And the wife is pretty much left at the house alone for a lot of the movie as the husband goes out and pretty much murders sex workers around Las Vegas. And there's a lot of he always takes like a bunch of their hair. As the movie goes on, you start to discover that the mother had dressed up the young son as a woman in his past, and this had a very strong trauma in his life, and he deals with that, and also the coddling from his mother and kind of childlike kind of thoughts that come from that, the mindset that comes from that, just breaks him down. And the wife has no idea what's going on. She's busy trying to, he is growing increasingly uninterested in her. He's having these attacks, these kind of psychotic breaks. You got Harmony, who's kind of telling his side of this story and what he's witnessing of how the mother had treated the son and also him, how that is coming out and how everybody treats the wife, and it's just insane, the kind of story behind it. But the actual execution of it, it's kind of a slow moving movie. The wife character, I do like the character, but I feel like she is underutilized and kind of underwritten in a way. And that's kind of really my only complaints. The music is really good. A lot of these films have amazing music that are referenced throughout. And yeah, it does really add to this kind of... the wife character also has this kind of stepmother who has her working in kind of Carl girl kind of situation at her bar. She is skeptical of this young man that she has just married. She doesn't want to go back to the bar and deal with that kind of stuff. We get some background into why the stepmother is there, what happened to her biological mother, everything like that. I just feel like they could have written a better character with the wife. The mother is, kind of your go-to, very protective, coddling kind of mother. She does a very good job. Definitely the standout in this film as an actor is the husband. But, the pretty solid little film. Definitely has a vibe of like a late 60s kind of film. So yeah, probably my least favorite of the entire set, but still a solid film, still recommended. And up next, we move on to the Voodoo Heartbeat, also known as the sex serum of Dr. Blake. This was fun, man. This was almost like a. It starts off a little bit slow. We have this scientist who had recently gotten back from, I believe, Africa, and he brought this kind of serum. It's like sold as like a youth serum, and he is supplying it to this. Geez, what do you want to call it? Kind of like a sketchy corporate kind of like drug company, pharmaceutical company kind of thing. Um, and they're using a guinea pig of this guy released from death row. Um, they're using him as a guinea pig to see the effects. The scientist recalls a story of the effects. So the first like 18 minutes of this are pretty much this kind of ritual that he experienced in Africa, um, which really does kind of introduce what this drug can do to a person. Basically, it turns you into like kind of a sex crazed maniac, very violent, aggressive kind of character. Um, and we see that with this guinea pig situation. Uh, the guinea pig is recently released from jail. He has his daughter come visit him, but the whole time he's telling his daughter to stay away from him. He's dealing with all these kind of situations. Um, and he has her stay with like one of her girlfriends. It's got a lot of different kind of elements to it. You got kind of a spy drama kind of going on. You got these kind of these kind of organizations that want access to the serum. You got all these people trying to expose what the serum can do to people. It's just a lot going on in this film, but I had a really good time. It's shot very well. This is probably one of the more damaged elements on the disc, but it still is fairly easy to follow. Not too complicated of a story, and yeah, just really solid. Again, great early '70s exploitation genre kind of film. Up next, we got What's Love, which is a film that was started in the early '70s. It was supposed to be this epic film, sort of focusing on this character of the devil and all the different kind of people that he affects. It starts off with this introduction of the devil talking about how he is able to take different forms and use these forms to tempt people and to, kind of fuck with people's lives, pretty much. Um, uh, this character is very fascinating. We have these kind of like long monologues from this devil. When we see the actual devil, he almost has this like kind of oh god, kind of like a Sebastian Bach, like '80s hair metal kind of look to him and stuff. Real kind of goofy character. And we get all these kind of vignettes of different stories of people who are his manifestations on Earth and their kind of moves. So you get, and it's really interesting because it was shot. A lot of it was unfinished in the '70s, and then they went back and shot a bunch of it in the '80s with kind of contemporary film stars, and that's where you get Ginger Allen, which is Ginger Lynn Allen. Really cool to see her in this film, like a very important figure in '80s erotic film, adult film, and she plays this character who was like always in love with this like priest, and he's in the process of joining the priesthood. It's this whole like he's making the commitments. At the beginning of this vignette, he's talking to one of the elder priests, kind of about like, is he ready to take on this responsibility with all like the temptation in the world and all these kind of questions that you would have to deal with in that situation. Um, and she does end up seducing him, and it's all kind of the effects of these sort of things. You get the first vignette is all about a biker um, who is the devil, and these kind of Jesus, and like it kind of plays off of a lot of these like good and evil, but all in explorations of what love can represent. You have and as like the devil takes over somebody's life, it usually falls apart and they end up dead, and then the next person in the line has to take over, and you get all these people intersecting. You get the cop from the first um, vignette comes back in the third. It's very interesting, kind of has a very 70s feel to it, but you definitely get a lot of the vibe of the 80s kind of erotic films. Uh, Very cool. Just as like a historical piece and a pretty solid adult film. Good story, good vignettes. There's not like an overabundance of like sex. It's not technically a erotic porno kind of film. It's got a little bit more going on, but yeah, very highly recommended that one. And then we finish out this first part with The Last of the American Hoboes by director Titus Modi, who I'm not really familiar with. He's done a few things. There's another short on here about outlaw motorcycle groups in the 1960s that was done a year before this. So, yeah, and like that's pretty interesting. But Last of the American Hobos is kind of a documentary, uh, maybe pseudo documentary, kind of about the life of an American hobo. This kind of forgotten sort of element of Americana, of American life. These people who live on the outskirts of society, who have their own sort of society built on the lamb and living off the earth and stuff like that. It's really interesting. It almost I did see Coleman Francis's name in the credits. I believe he was an executive producer or something. I can't remember, but this definitely has a lot of the feel of the Coleman Francis films. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're familiar with Mystery Science Theater 3000, they did a lot of Coleman Francis films throughout their time and kind of shined a light on him. My favorite being Red Zone Cuba. So that was kind of the vibe you got from this. It's kind of a pseudo documentary. You got a lot of great like kind of hobo country folk kind of music playing through it. A lot of great compositions. If like a lot of these films, if you released a soundtrack to them, it would be killer because a lot of these songs are great. Just a very moving piece. And it's kind of shot interesting because you'll have these kind of, you know, they seem kind of staged kind of situations. That's why I think it's referred to as a pseudo documentary, because they stage these kind of conversations and events and then overdub them with kind of an ADR kind of voiceover kind of thing. Which definitely has that feel of a Coleman Francis film, kind of this detached, kind of not completely synced up, but it does do an interesting kind of like character study of this kind of group of hobos. It dives into like their kind of daily routines and how they're able to survive and get food and all these different sort of rituals about like hopping trains and the type of tragedies they see take place on the train, the people that get killed and die trying to get on the train and get robbed, and different factions of people who are, fighting these other factions of people. Very interesting kind of character studies throughout this. So yeah, very cool kind of like forgotten piece of Americana kind of study in Last American Hoboes. And that finishes up part one, the first 3 discs of this set, which brings us to the second part. And I kind of did these out of order. Red Midnight was on the first disc with the documentary Against the Grain, which I talked about in my last video. In case you haven't seen that yet, just talking about the history of Vinegar Syndrome and other restoration companies, Blu-ray companies, repertory companies. It talks a lot about like Something Weird Video and all these kind of backstories. So if you want to hear about that, my thoughts on that film, go back to the last video that I did on the top 23 films of Vinegar Syndrome. But yeah, so I started off this set with Violated, which is wow. This is like the first film of the set that I was like really, really in love with. And it's definitely one of the sleaziest films in this set. It is from 1973 or 75. I keep seeing the problem with a lot of these is like distribution. You get different dates, when it was shot and when it was distributed, when it was shown publicly. It's a lot of gray area in there, but definitely like in early 70s. And this came out probably around the time that the only other thing that was doing this kind of rape revenge sort of theme. The closest thing I can think of from that time is Last House on the Left. This is before I Spit on Your Grave, Miss 45, Thriller, A Cruel Picture. All these kind of big names in the rape revenge genre started to come out. And this has like kind of a weird kind of take on it. So there's this masked rapist running around with a knife. His mask is kind of this like monkey kind of over the top kind of mask. And he's like assaulting women and cutting a swastika into them. And there's this kind of search going on from this a bunch of cops, but they're trying to like, they're not doing their job well enough in the eyes of those who are being assaulted. And it really goes in a lot of really crazy directions. The main character, what is her? I can't remember her name, but she's played by Renee Bond. It's so over the top, and she almost becomes more of like the sadist in this entire situation, just torturing people to get answers out of them and getting a real like kink and joy out of seeing them tortured. And she says a lot about like eye for an eye. She brings on her, I guess he's like her boyfriend or partner, who is former military, to help torture and get the information they want out of these people. And he seems like he's even more gone than she is. And as the film goes on, we see him go off in these different directions. And another victim has come on to assist them as well, but she is very skeptical of their motives of getting answers out of these people via torture. I believe she's like a German immigrant. Her parents had dealt with the Nazis, and a lot of the tactics that the couple are using to torture these young men they're suspecting of being this masked rapist. It's it triggers her a lot, and she is, you know, but she wants to help them get their revenge, and you even see a bit of her sadistic elements come out throughout the film as well. We got two main suspects throughout the film that we kind of follow. There's a ton of good twists towards the end. You really can't like root for anybody in this film. It's well done in the way that it does the nobody's likable in this entire film, like to a T. It does it very well, and these characters are all very convincing. Just a very aggressive film. Definitely is not politically correct, and tons of trigger warnings. But man, it is a lot of fun and has a lot of that great like early '70s kind of genre film magic to it. Up next is probably the weirdest fucking thing in this entire set. And I did not expect to have as much fun with this movie as I inevitably did. And that is the Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle. Man, right from the beginning, this is a wacky fucking thing, man. It's following around this young man. It's shot in Malaysia. There's a lot of weird dubbing throughout it. Don Greer, who is much more known for like erotic films, I believe he did Alice in Acidland and a bunch of other stuff that Vinegar sent. No, wait, take that back. That wasn't him. I get these directors all mixed up. When I'm doing this all in like one marathon, some things get kind of mixed up. Don Greer did Jekyll and Hyde Portfolio, I believe. Should have had this up on the screen. Anyway, but Vinegar Syndrome has released a lot of like, he does more of like an adult film kind of things. But this is interesting because he's doing a kind of a children's film. It's a very musical. These songs are incredibly catchy. Just like a lot of like effects and goofy like. So basically, this kid has like a pet duck that he names Mr. Quack Quack, and he's trying to prevent his family from killing the duck. I guess the duck is causing a lot of problems for the family. So he takes the duck and gets in his boat and goes off to Cannibal Isle, which is this secluded island that parents have no idea where he is. Nobody's seen him. They don't see the boat. But they're pretty much like comfortable in thinking that, he's probably safe. And basically Cannibal Isle is just like populated with these crazy kind of crocodile men, these kind of guys dressed up in these elaborate crocodile suits, who all have like some of the goofiest over-the-top British accents I have ever heard. Just total goofy fake British accents. It's kind of hilarious in a way. And they when this young man discovers them, sees them torturing Rare Blue Ape, who is extremely intelligent, and I guess like because of the intelligence of the blue ape and the human, the crocodile people do not understand what they are saying, and they kind of just like want to keep it down in there, all your nonsense and stuff like that. It's kind of a bit funny, and just it's got this like main guy, like Captain Croc, I think it's Krock, and he's got his whole musical number, and they're like kind of planning on eating this blue ape kind of character, and the duck is integral in like getting them out, and so they can find out like how to properly destroy these crocodile men. It's just ridiculous. The songs are fucking goofy as shit. It's like a acid version of some like fucking Disney musical or something like that. Just the effects are really good on the Blue Ape. Um, Looks, a lot of the costumes are really great. The scenery is amazing. There's a couple of sequences within this giant like waterfall cave kind of situation. It just looks gorgeous. Like the kind of locations and stuff that they're shooting are just fantastic. So yeah, like it's a bizarre film, but it stands out in the collection just for being completely off the wall. And it's kind of like a kind of palate cleanser after all this like crazy porno and kind of sketchy character studies, let's say, throughout this thing. So I was very surprised in how much fun I had with the rare blue apes of Cannibal Isle. Up next, another one of the coolest films in this set, Beware the Black Widow. And this is from 1968, and it's got a lot of sort of giallo kind of aspects. But it feels more like, the early forms of giallo. There's definitely a lot of reference to Hitchcock and early Mario Bava. This is from '68, so obviously, like, giallo had been kind of a new cinematic movement, and you do see a lot of like blood and black lace within this, but you see a lot of like little, but it also has a lot of vibes of like a Herschel Gordon Lewis kind of thing. A lot of these films definitely call to mind the classic like '60s genre exploitation filmmakers, and this is very interesting. You do have some weird representations. You have a Asian character who's obviously not played by an Asian person, is extremely over the top in his kind of portrayal. Um, you got like, it's basically focused around this brothel with this kind of mafia guy. It's kind of weird because they're like dealing with drugs. It's kind of convoluted in what their actual goal is. You have this writer, newspaper journalist, inspector, kind of private detective character. He's always fighting with his like partner higher up. So some of those scenes are kind of entertaining. You get a lot of great like weird burlesque music throughout this. Like, just such a crazy fucking movie. And one by one, all of these kind of mobster guys start getting killed off while they're with these escorts in this brothel. They're bringing in and questioning all of the madams. The killer is reported to be a woman in a kind of a veil, the kind of thing you would wear to like a funeral or something like that. And she's going around and killing off all these, mobster guys, and they're trying to figure out like who's responsible. Very, very interesting film. A lot of these characters are very well written. Just a great like kind of snapshot into that early kind of how American filmmakers would interpret these kind of Italian filmmaking kind of tropes of the time. Like I said, early Bava, we're talking about like giallo films are first starting to become a big kind of export. So yeah, it's just, there's so much nudity. There's all these kind of like burlesque scenes with this ridiculous music, but it's so good. It's like the vocals on a lot of it are almost played off like like a childish thing. Very kind of strange, but it works really well for the kind of tone of this film. It is very kind of wacky at times. The main mob boss is goofy as shit, very cartoonishly over the top as far as mob bosses, and I really did enjoy this film. Another really, really great one, and towards the top of the list on the entire set. Uh, Up next is another one that kind of at first didn't really draw me in too quickly, but man, as it went on, just seeing these characters interact and these kind of weird phobias and traumas and backstories. Uh, we got Deep Inside by Joe Cerno, who they've released some stuff from him. Bunch of more like kind of straightforward erotic films, but they always have this film of this element of art to them. They're a lot more, and these are early erotic films, like late '60s, early '70s, um, and they're more focused on like character studies. The sex is more put in there as kind of like a selling point, kind of to get more mainstream audiences in the seats to see these films, and it's but when you get beyond that, it's a very interesting character study. Basically, there's this like post high school reunion with all these girls who were friends. They meet in this kind of like beach seaside kind of neighborhood, and they some of them bring along their husbands who have like tendencies of drinking and abuse. There's like some of the locals are brought in to like kind of people are trading partners and sleeping with each other and all this kind of stuff. There's all these kind of like vendettas that people are holding on to. There's not really a lot of trustworthy people in the organization standpoint of this, but as time goes on, you kind of slowly change who you're rooting for in this film. Uh, just characters will like change on like the drop of a hat. There's like all this like kind of hidden violence behind a lot of it, and a lot of this kind of like a lot of mental issues, and there's also people exploiting these kind of things to kind of just create chaos or to get their way, and like sometimes it might seem like it's coming from like the element of trying to be helpful, but ends up screwing them over in the end, and as you get deeper into these characters, it is like a very in-depth character study. These characters have such kind of complexity to them, and how they react to one another and how they interact really does like shine a light on like all these different kind of personalities at play, and it's definitely an interesting film if you take the time to kind of get into it. A lot of it's kind of hard to follow because there is like who's this character, it kind of gets a little convoluted at times, but I do think it does work and comes all together very well in the end, and it's kind of a satisfying and kind of disappointing ending in a lot of ways. A lot of unanswered questions on what happens next, but very solid. You could tell that the director is definitely coming from more of an art background. In reading about this, he wanted to be more like a kind of Ingmar Bergman kind of figure, but because he was trying to be more, kind of financially successful, he'd put in these kind of erotic elements to get people in the seats to appeal to a more widespread mainstream audience. But yeah, very, very cool film. again, it's a little bit slow. It's not as the music is very good in it. It's got more of like a jazzy kind of a background kind of soundtrack, not as lyrical as a lot of these other films music is, but man, very cool. Great screenplay as well. I would love to read like an actual like kind of treatment transcript of this because it is very well written, and these characters definitely have a lot of like depth to them. So yeah, deep inside, and definitely a fitting title. Very cool. And then the last film is disc one is Red Midnight, and yeah, this was my favorite film. And this almost seems like the kind of poster of the spotlight of this entire set is this film Red Midnight, made by this kind of middle-aged optometrist from Cape Cod, who just had this idea for a scare film meets exploitation film. It's almost like a nuclear scare film, as they say in the kind of documentary stuff that comes with the disc. It almost feels like a scare film made by Herschel Gordon Lewis, and even a little bit of like Ray Dennis Steckler, because there's this whole section of the film which is around a kind of like nightclub act. Great fucking song in it. God, I wish I could remember. But yeah, just like kind of like a Otis Redding kind of nightclub kind of song, and it's all about this group that's trying to that has nuclear weapons, atomic weapons, and their plan is at this given time they're going to start a range of big fires around these major cities across the country, to kind of like it's kind of like an anti-nuke protest, and it's also kind of an anti-industrialization, because it's the kind of idea behind it is all these buildings and all these kind of cities are built so close together that a flame can spread very quickly. There's all these discussions of like the spread, and so the plan is that they plan on starting all these fires all over major cities, and while those are going on, they're saving people and putting out the fires and everything like that. They orchestrate a nuclear bomb to go off in Cape Cod, which attracted me to the whole film because I vacationed in Cape Cod a lot of my youth. My parents still stay up there, so I got like a very close like kind of connection to Cape Cod, and it's always cool to see it pop up in films. I've talked about like Tough Guys Don't Dance, how that was made in like Provincetown and parts of it at Race Point, and all these places I'm very familiar from staying there in my youth. So that element of it was very cool. I like these kind of films that are made by directors who would never do anything else, who aren't even really film people. They just kind of want to make sort of like a film for whatever reason, and it's always kind of an interesting backstory to it. Like this optometrist from Cape Cod all of a sudden makes this movie about like nuclear devastation, and like there's all these kind of, well, let's blame it on the communists, and all it almost seems like of its time, but still pretty relevant. Like it definitely goes into kind of this like fear of what if these weapons got into the wrong hands, and this is during the 60s. It was very much like something that was going on, Bay of Pigs and Kennedy was like 20 years after the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima at the end of World War II. You know, nuclear proliferation is happening. You got Russia and America kind of manufacturing weapons at a ridiculous pace, stockpiling, and it almost kind of falls like into kind of a Doctor Strangelove, but if it was written by like a Herschel Gordon Lewis. Uh, these kind of scare films, and it even takes a bit from like the more educational kind of scare films where the narration is done. There's a lot of like stock footage being used. Almost feels like something from like Cornet or Reefer Madness, these kind of more pseudo educational exploitation films, the Kroger Bab kind of stuff. Um, just like it's just insane all and like I said, you have this giant musical number in the center of the film, with all these different kind of elements playing off of that, which kind of reminds me of a Ray Dennis Steckler kind of thing. In particular, the incredibly strange creatures that stopped living and became mixed up zombies. You have all these weird kind of like burlesque show kind of elements, and it's like it feels in that more of like an excuse to shoot all these kind of things. But the characters within this scene do play integral roles in the film. It's kind of more of like a kind of building this world in which these characters exhibit, and like a lot of stuff starts backfiring towards the end, and it goes in a lot of crazy directions. And I think like what's really cool about this disc, these films, this box set, is that there is so many different ideas going on, so many different genres. A lot of them in their earliest kind of metamorphosis stage. So you got stuff like Beware the Black Widow, which is playing off of like these giallo, early giallo kind of tropes and conventions. You got Violated, which is a very early like rape revenge kind of concept. When that was very much new. Like I said, I think the only thing before that is probably around the same time. I mean, is like Last House on the Left. You got, Deep Inside, which is more of like a character piece. You got the Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle, kids film. You got Barbara, which is a very early kind of like art film, early pornographic art film, almost, kind of looking into like censorship and how American society views sexuality, all that kind of stuff. It's just such an interesting set. You got the Last American Hoboes, the documentary, which again shines a light on this kind of forgotten element of American culture. Just very, very interesting. And what really works is that seems like what Vinegar Syndrome's been building up for a long time, and it really does spotlight why they're such an important company. And even now, with their support of other companies, they have all these sub labels and partner labels and everything like that. It really does show like why all these people coming together from all these different walks of life and ideas and influences and missions and everything like that, how their work is so integral to keeping these films alive and keeping history alive. These are really, these are historians working on this. There's like a lot of archival archaeology going on. It's just insane, and it's such an inspiration to be such a long time consumer, and even have conversations with people like behind a lot of this, and to regularly go to the archive, to be part of this world that almost seems kind of extinct for a long time. And it's very inspiring to be around just like such a community passionate about physical media for the right reasons. Because during VHS and DVD, there was a lot coming out that was not desirable. We didn't care much about quality, and it was just about getting these films out there. But now you got people really dedicating themselves to just all these great elements. You got the importance of special features and interviews to shine light on what is going on behind these movies, what the story, the influences, the inspirations that went into these films, the different artists that have been forgotten, directors who never made anything else, just these kind of fringe kind of communities making films. Uh, we've branched off into talking about shot on video and micro budget and these kind of weird kind of subgenres of stuff that was even further rejected by, you know, genre people. You know, we've gotten so deep into like what's so great about film, and a lot of stuff that was formerly lost, forgotten, or abandoned is now available. And I am very humbled to be able to talk about this, and I am very thankful to the people behind Vinegar Syndrome and all the other companies doing this work, and it makes me proud to be a supporter of physical media and a supporter of the arts in general. So yeah, man, I am in love with this set, and I have enjoyed watching these 10 films over the last couple of days. And yeah, so let me know what you thought of these films, if you got the set, what you think of the set, you know, the different elements, and what your favorite film, what your least favorite film, if you disagree with anything that I've said, if you have more to give to the conversation, put it down there in the comments, man. You know, like I always say, it's about this conversation. That's the excitement I get about it, is like different opinions constructively being talked about. So yeah, go down there in the comments and let's discuss this. Let's get people excited about these releases and future releases as well. You know, like, subscribe if you have not already. I'm always on Instagram at the Hordes of Manzerfaust, so add that if you want to see more on there. I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that I don't usually talk about on this channel because they don't kind of really serve the physical media discussion, in my opinion. So you can find me talking about that stuff on there. And yeah, that'll about do it. So happy 2024. And in a couple of hours, you'll have the subscription for 2024 from Vinegar Syndrome going online. I'm excited. I hope you're all excited too. And like I said before with the comments, go down there in the comments. Tell me if you're subscribing, why or why not, and what you want to see them release. What are some titles that you still think need to be put out there? Let's have a discussion about that, and let's get excited about physical media and what magic it can provide us with, and the kind of justice that it brings a lot of these forgotten kind of films and this forgotten art. So yeah, this is Mike Manzer with another Manzerfaust Productions video. Stay fucking metal.